The following summary will illustrate the basics of the transatlantic slave trade. Until it was banned by the English Parliament in 1789 and the United States in 1808, it could be said that it was divided into about 8 steps. The map shows that the slave trade formed a triangle in the Atlantic Ocean. At the top of the triangle were either the shipping ports of Bristol, Rhode Island, New York, or Liverpool, England. The slave ships left their ports with rum, guns, knives, textiles, and jewelry, and would proceed to the windward coast, Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, or Slave Coast of Africa for trading for slaves. From West Africa to the West Indies, it was called the Middle Passage, a trip of varying length but about 7 weeks. At the Caribbean ports of Havana and Jamaica, slaves are bartered and traded. Sugar or molasses are purchased to ship back to the United States or Great Britain to be turned back into rum, and the triangle starts all over again. One is when African tribal leaders routinely kidnap men, women, and children from their neighboring tribes and villages in raids. This is called panniering. The slaves of the famous Amistad were kidnapped in this way from Sierra Leone in 1839. This was made into a movie. Their leader, Sinke, never saw his wife again. Step 2. The African tribal leaders then sell their kidnapped collection to the Portuguese, Spanish, English, or to the New Yankees. Step 3. The captured slaves are marched to the ports on the slave coast in coffles and chains of slaves, chained or yoked together at the neck with forked wooden sticks. Marches sometimes lasted weeks. Step 4. Slaves are taken and collected to be exhibited to the slave traders at the slave castles or fortresses to wait for slave ships to arrive. Step 5. Slave ships, slavers as they are called, are fully packed from 200 up to 900 and sail to the major slave harbors or ports in the West Indies, Brazil, or Lisbon. Havana, Cuba was the largest slave port in the world. However, before they got across the Middle Passage to the West Indies, the sick and dying slaves are routinely thrown overboard, or if there is a shortage of food due to the voyage taking too long. Step 6. Slave traders or buyers barter for slaves or buy them at auction. Step 7. Slaves are now shipped into their final destination in the colonies or to British, Dutch, French, or Portuguese colonies. Brazil, the largest Portuguese colony, received 4 million slaves during the 17th to 19th centuries. In the 18th century, Virginia received more than 45,000 slaves, and Charleston, South Carolina, about 65,500 slaves before the slave trade became illegal. It should be noted that due to diseases, running out of food and water, just dying of heat, or bad air and ship captains, it is more to their advantage to toss these slaves, which can be 20 to 30% overboard, and collect on their insurance from underwriters of the ships. Step 9. Finally, the slaves that did survive the Middle Passage and the trip up from the colonies were put to use.